Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Two Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our final review of Ghost Reveries by Opeth. So Viles had 1 week to listen to this album on his own. I've heard this album like a million times. So I want to know, I'm going to give you the floor, I want to know what you think after 1 week of having this album sit with you.
Okay, so after a week of listening to Ghost Reveries, so you guys watched my first impressions last week. Hopefully you watched it and you know what I kind of thought after a first listen. And I'm gonna say that, you know, I listened to it a lot. I listened to this album a lot. And at first my opinion started kind of going up. Like, okay, yeah, this is some pretty good stuff, But then something happened, and this is part of the reason we've talked about this on our channel many times. This is one of the reasons we listen to albums over and over and over again. It's the fatigue factor. Will this album get boring? Will it start to get stale if you listen to it too much? And for me, that started to happen. And it sucks to say that, but it did. So around maybe like Tuesday, this is after like 3.5 to 4 days of listening to it like a lot, I started going, you know, I'm not really in the mood for this anymore. When it was on, I was just kind of bored. I messaged you, I texted you, and I said, hey man, what can I do? Like, what is there something like special about this album I should be listening to? And you suggested, you know, listen to something else. You know, the fatigue's gonna set in, listen to something else, whatever. So I tried that, listened to a few other things. Then I went back to this album, Ghost Reveries, and it didn't feel like it had that spark where I was just eager to listen to it. Except for one song. There was one song that stood out to me, and that was The Grand Conjuration. I think that song is great. I think out of all the tracks on this album, the song's phenomenal. I think just beginning to end is probably the only song in the whole album that I like the entire track. And that alone is one of the reasons why this album was falling apart for me, because every song on this album has stuff that I like, but it's only parts of songs. And that really bothers me. It's one of my biggest downfalls with progressive metal as a genre in total. The songs are so long, okay? And I understand long songs are epic and blah, 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 blah. But you take an album, you know, what's an average song like? About 5 minutes, give or take, yeah. Right? Average. So most albums have songs that are around 5 minutes, and then they might have one song at the end or one song in the middle that's like 12 or 13 minutes long. And that song is known as like the epic song on the album. And the epic song is like the special song. When you do that to all your songs, it turns the song from being epic into something that's average, right? Because every song now has that same kind of vibe. And for me, that detracts from the specialness of being a long song. Specialness isn't a word, but I'm not an English scholar, so I don't care. So you take a song like the first song, Ghost of Perdition, for example. The song's like, what, almost 15 minutes long?
Yeah.
Around there, ballpark. And basically, like, you can section that song into like probably 3 to 4 different segments. They can all be their own song. So you got an album that's 8 songs long, when realistically, what I'm hearing in my head is, you know, 12, 13, 14 different songs, but some of them are mashed together into one track. And I think that's a waste, because what that does is it prevents me from liking a whole track, and it makes it so I can only like half of a track. And I feel like a lot of that length of the song is just filler stuff used merely to increase the length of the song. I don't feel like it adds really much substance to the music. And I mean, that's just my opinion, but I feel like certain parts could be either cut out or shortened in order to make the song have just more punch to it. And I know music doesn't always have to have punch to it. Sometimes it's about just going for the ride, but I can't go for the ride 8 times in a row, right? The ride is supposed to happen at certain points for me, and that's what makes it special. If I had to say, you know, I liked all the songs. I didn't think there was any bad music or anything like that, but just as far as things that stood out to me or things that, you know, caught my attention and really tickled my eardrums, The Grand Conjuring was the only one that really did the best job. The rest of the songs had little bits and pieces and parts here and there that did, but nothing really stood out great. The only song I didn't like at all was the last song, Isolation Years. I thought that song was, I mean, it's decent for a closer for the album, but I also felt like it was a little bit bland, a little bit, I don't know what to say about it, but it was skippable for me. When it came on, I was like, I listened to it, but I'm just like, whatever, next.
So how would you have felt though if Isolation Years wasn't a track, but what's in that track was on the end of the Grand Conjuration? How would you...
So if the Grand Conjuration was like 5 minutes longer than it...
If it had a little bit of an extension to the ending, and that extension is what is Isolation Years. Maybe not as long, but how would you feel?
I wouldn't feel good about that, because it goes against what I was just saying. Basically, the Grand Conjuration is still a long song, but it's the only long song where I felt like each section of the song, which could have been divided into different tracks themselves, but each section felt still all like the same song. Where you take any other song, Beneath the Mire, for example, or Reverie, Harlequin Forest, those songs are, again, like between 10 and 15 minutes long, and it sounds like the first section of the song is one track, second section is another track completely different than the first one, and then the last part is completely different than the first two parts. It just is so disjointed. They don't mesh together. They don't sound like one complete unit. Whereas the Grand Conjuration, for me, I feel like it all gels together. I don't know what's really different about it, because it does have different sections, but for me it just still sounds like one complete full song.
You know, I think a big part of it for you with the Grand Conjuration is that song actually comes back to its own melody near the end. If you listen to the end,
yeah,
it does the same melody as the beginning.
Exactly, and that's a definite key factor. Where if you take a song like Reverie / Harlequin Forest, that song is way different at the beginning than it is at the end. And I will say that the second half of that song is great. It's one of the best parts of the album. You know, the melodic vocals that are going on, like just, I shouldn't say melodic vocals, but I don't even know how to explain it, but maybe that's what it is. The melody of his voice, the way he's singing the songs, I fucking love it. It's great, but it takes roughly 7 minutes of the song to get to the part I like, right? And that's my issue. Like, the first 7 minutes isn't bad, but I feel like it lacks in content. I'm just waiting for it to get to the good part. The good part should come a lot sooner.
So if you split that into two songs though, like the first half,
right?
Would that, like, let's say that first half was its own track, then
Yep.
How would you feel about that track as like an intro track to the other half?
If it was split, the first half probably couldn't be a track on its own. It would have to have a little bit more to it. They'd have to throw some sort of chorus in there, or something,
or maybe make it just shorter.
Maybe, or make it shorter or something like that. Something would have to be done to it. The second half of the song could be its own track. First half, I mean, maybe it's its own track, and as its own track, I don't know. I'd really have to hear it as its own track to see if I really like it or not. It might be one of those ones it's okay but skippable, kind of like the last track. But I don't know, it's hard to say.
Well, the biggest thing about this album for me, and why I love it, is how much of an adventure it is. You said, a big track is usually like the whole ride there, whatever. I think the entire album is what the ride is. Mm-hmm. Like, you go from start of Ghost of Perdition to the end of Isolation Years, and it feels like just a giant roller coaster going in so many different directions. It's like you're exploring through a cave and you're finding all these different treasures all over the place, and there's so many different caverns going on different directions. You said that it is very disjunct, and while I understand that, I also feel like it's just a lot of content, and I feel like that none of it is bad at all whatsoever. Everything in the album feels good, sounds good. Now, some of it is a little bit disjointed as to like, well, why does this go to something completely different? And I can understand that, but I also feel like that's part of the ride. Yeah. Like, it's a little bit unstable, but that's what kind of opens your mind to like, I don't even know what's coming next.
Yeah, in comparison to that, we reviewed an album by the Ocean Collective recently, Paleozoic 1 Paleozoic, got 2 toe tags. That album I feel like is a good example of an album that takes you for a ride the whole time, but is not disjointed. The album flows very well, and it doesn't feel like you're kind of being taken out and putting back in and stuff like that.
It's interesting because I do recall you saying for, I think, the longest song on the album, which was about 10 minutes, that the first chunk, was kind of boring you and you just wanted to get to your favorite part. Like, similar. Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be moments. I don't think you're ever going to like 100% of an album. There's always going to be a section here, a part there. But as a whole album, like you just mentioned, I feel like that one flowed a lot better. This is all subjective stuff now, right? This is my opinion versus your opinion. I would put this album, Ghost Reveries, more along the same lines as Earn by Nihil Viscaris, as far as the flow and what the album offers as a whole. That, I feel actually pretty much very similar to that album that I do to this album, where it's a lot of very good music, a lot of very good content, but it's just like it's for me, it's just the good stuff is broken up too much, and then there's a lot of filler in between. So that's, again, it's opinion based stuff.
And if there's anything in this album that really like speaks to me specifically, I mean, I also love the entirety of the Grand Conjuration. I do love how it does come full circle.
Yep.
But the beginning of Beneath the Mire gets me every single time.
Yep.
Even though it's so simple, it's a simple drum beat into a fill, and then it starts. But I really love how eerie and scary it sounds. Like, it really hammers the title of Ghost Reveries right into your head when you listen to that track. And I remember it was one day I just put this album on and I heard that, you know, little drum bit and it blew my mind. Like, wow, how come I never noticed this before? I also really like the ending of Atonement. Such a pretty sound. And yeah, just overall, this album is just a lot of beauty to me. There's just so much happening, so much enjoyable stuff. But anyway, let's get to ratings. So what do you rate this album?
You know what, I do wish I liked this album more. I know there's a lot of Opeth fans. I know a lot of you guys are Opeth fans. That was shown on our last video. There's a lot of people that think this album's a masterpiece, and I don't want to take that away from you guys, but for me, I'm trying to like when I'm listening to the album, I'm really trying to like it. I'm really trying to find stuff about it that sticks out to me that I can be kind of impressed by and stuff to talk about. But if you notice through this video, like, how much was I really talking about any specific parts of songs? Not much. That tells me that there was not much substance there that really grabbed me. I mentioned the Nail with the Scaris album because throughout my week listening to this, I kept kind of thinking about that album, thinking, this is reminding me of that as far as my feelings go. So I think in all fairness, my rating is going to reflect that as well. Now, I don't remember what I rated that album. All I remember is that it didn't get a toe tag. I still think this is a great album, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, which is still a solid score. And I just want to say one thing before I pass it off to your rating, and then you can do the outro, but a lot of people are going to say that, oh, Vile doesn't like it because he doesn't like progressive metal. I just want to say something in my defense, that I've given toe tags to several progressive metal albums this year alone, like probably 4 or 5 if you count ones that are obscurely progressive. But progressive metal might not be my favorite genre of metal, but it's not like I don't like it, right? So I can easily listen to a prog metal album and still appreciate it. It has nothing to do with that. So I just want to clear that up for anybody that's going to say, oh, Vile only likes death metal, blah, blah, blah. I just want to put that out there. So, but yeah, sorry, it only gets a 7 from me.
All right, well, I mean, you know, I've talked about how much I love this album, how pretty it is sounding to me, and, you know, even listening to it during our listening session, I still realize why I love it. It gets my toe tag because it's just such a strong album. I mean, you could interchange this with Blackwater Park or Still Life as an intro to the band, but this one's just my personal favorite. That's why I selected it.
I think I'll check those albums out too to see maybe if one of them grabs me a little more than this one did.
Perhaps.
When I get a chance, I'll definitely check those out.
Yeah, those are both also solid albums. Anyway, guys, a 7 from Vile, toe tag for me, so close but no cigar for Ghost Reveries. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Tell us what you thought of this album. We read all your comments. Like, comment, favorite, subscribe if you're new. I'm TV Fish.
And I'm Vile Self.
We'll see you guys later.